Hello everybody, I believe I'm live. Welcome to the stream guys, my name is Will and I run William's C-Sharp walkthroughs. Um, I have prepared a very exciting, I think it's going to be quite an exciting workshop. It's going to be really chill today. Sorry guys, I just need to check things up and running. It's going to be a very interesting workshop today. There are some. I'm going to be tapering off, guys, from my previous workshop regarding Netcode. Guys, there's probably not going to be music today, unfortunately, because the main reason is that I don't want YouTube to catch me. I'm a little bit wary about YouTube, so for this particular workshop, if there's any workshop that won't have music, it may be this one, in case YouTube decides to chase my videos. I don't know. I have a cup of mocha. I made it myself. Hot chocolate. I think about 4 scoops of hot chocolate with some coffee. I got some nice mocha. Alright guys, without much further ado, let me go through the agenda today. Firstly, what's Telefyy? What's this on the right hand side, these notes? Any of you guys that are joining the stream maybe for the first time, or you're just kind of checking out my work, Telefyy is an e-commerce platform that I'm building. I'm using C#, I'm using Visual Studio, I'm using .NET to build an e-commerce platform called Telefyy. And what does Telefyy do? I'm building Telefyy such that e-commerce sellers can network with product SaaS suppliers, and such that customers can buy from merchants, right? So I want Telefyy to be a rather complete platform, but I'm going step by step. So I have this is episode 14. I have roughly 13 other episodes of development. I won't say tutorials, more like walkthroughs of my development journey. And so yeah, today we'll probably start fairly promptly on Netcode, and I'm probably going to be focusing the majority of this workshop on Netcode. I want to get Telefyy online. And we're going to dive into I'm going to dive into some of the steps to take Telefyy online. So without further ado, let me read some of the agenda. So what are the notes on Telefy's Netcode? Let me just scroll up. Is there more there? I think let me see. I might as well read the approach. So you are like this. Okay, so actually, this is good. This is good. So I want to talk about the previous episode, because in the previous episode, before we start code, if I even touch code, in the previous episode, I was attempting to push a newsfeed feature using the Telegram bot API. So I was trying to sort of ad hoc a way to create this kind of client server model using Telegram's own built-in API, like Telegram bot API, which I think is possible. If you refer to the previous workshop, you'll see what I was attempting to do. But it's far more robust. I'm gonna probably just demonstrate here while I'm talking. I'll load up Telefyy, which is the app, my e-commerce platform I'm building. Not much in terms of user interface so far. I'm really building the back-end systems. I only have like a login page so far for the user interface. A login page that stores my credentials locally on my machine. But as you can kind of pertain towards here, I have some Netcode stuff. If I open my Solution Explorer, I have like my models namespace, I have my networking namespace, my views namespace, my controllers namespace. I've sorted out the data flow with regards to the user interface and business logic. I think it was like episode 4 of my workshop series, where not just MVC in terms of my naming convention for my folders MVC, but there are specific behaviors with implementing functions that I tried to mimic an MVC style data flow with regards of separation of concerns. So that's that. Refer to some of my previous episodes if you want to have a look at when I had literally developed all of that. To kind of like streamline user interface / business logic. So I'm loading Telefyy. Guys, I have an exciting app, my post scheduling light app, I would say. This is another Telegram based app that I built. It's here, it's already loaded. It's already deployed on my machine. I've debugged my app. I have even launched this app on the store. Guys, if you want this app, it's on the Windows Store. All it allows you to do is to post Telegram. You can schedule Telegram posts via Telegram bots, right, on a calendar. Hold on a sec. Telefyy is still loading up. And what I was doing, guys, just to taper off from, just to summarize from the previous workshop, I was treating my automated posts as a server, just to test, while I was writing netcode for Telefyy to catch like newsfeed messages from my post scheduling application. I don't want to put too many things on the screen, but I just want to kind of demonstrate things. So I have here my bot chat. I'm going to set a date, which is today's date, 29th of December. I believe it's 29th. I'm going to set a time. Why don't I do, it's 3 minutes past 8. Why don't I do 5 past? I'm going to write a message. I'm going to just make a simple hello world message. I'm going to include the bot token, which I actually have hard coded in my app somewhere. Is it not working? Can't remember. It's in my bot connect, I think. I literally don't remember. Oh no, it's in my main page. So this is my bot, my API token. Oh, my app just kind of froze. Hopefully everything's alright. I'm going to pass my bot token. And when I push to the server, wait, can I push it to? Oh no, okay, cool. I was gonna change the time to 4 minutes past 8 for speed, but nah. So first I'm gonna add the post. Here we go. Just double check the timestamp. That's 5 past 8. And yeah, I'm gonna push the post to my server, or my client rather, to Telegram client via my local server. So this app actually acts as a local server. Excuse me, guys. Let's hope everything runs. Get a bit of lag there. Here we go, connection success. I'm gonna close the window. I'm gonna initiate conversation with my bot. Hi bot. And then at 5 past 8, I should get a hello world message on the right hand side on my Telegram chat. Just for me to demonstrate this application and how it works. This app is on Windows Store or Microsoft Store. I think it's called Microsoft. Let me see what it's called. Is it Microsoft Store? Microsoft Store, yeah. So on Microsoft Store, I have vended this application. If you want to buy it, it's there. It's quite cheap, so feel free. If you have any, if you guys want to chat, feel free to hop on the live chat. There we go. Hello world is over here. So 5 past 8. Hello world. So I was basically using this. So the idea is that I was testing. Can I push, say, a newsfeed message? Let's just say hello. We'll use this example. Hello world. Can I push, say, a hello world message, and then my Telefyy app can then detect via my bot, basically my bot agent, that there's a message being pushed, with or without the chat, actually, all in the back end, and then can Telefyy, because if I include the same bot, I might be able to expose the session. Then can Telegram, or rather Telefyy, then push my hello world, say, if that was a newsfeed, onto an instance of Telefyy app. So then I have like a dedicated server pushing messages to all instances of Telefyy. That was the idea. But I was considering other options as well. I think, if I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head, I think if I log in, a message gets pushed onto Telegram. I'm not 100% sure. Let me give it a try. I was just coding. Was it yesterday? Yesterday I was coding, or the day before? I can't remember. So I've been like messing around with the code, so I'm not too sure what happens when I attempt to log in. I think a message gets pushed, like a test message, onto my bot chat. I'm not 100% sure, I can't remember. I have to check the code. Maybe nothing will happen. I think a hi bot message comes up. That's what I was trying to test, like hello world began. Let me try. Hi bot. I don't even remember. Yeah, there we go. So message obtained from. Oh yeah, that was it. So basically, and I get this weird because I'm not disposing of my task properly. I think so. I'm getting an exception thrown. I'm just waiting for Visual 2. But on the right hand side, my message got pushed from Telefyy higher, and this is the chat ID. Oh no, that's interesting. The update, or rather, update ID changes per session. I think. Yeah, I'm not handling this task properly. I need to learn how to use tasks properly. I need to study how to use tasks properly. Make sure I'm using my disposable. Make sure I'm calling disposable or something like that for this. I am using a using statement, so it's a bit strange that my task, maybe because I'm returning, so my task is not getting, I'm not sorting out my task properly. Maybe this is because I'm returning it. That's what I think. Anyway, yesterday or the last session, this ID was ending in like 84 or 94. Now it's ending in 11. So I think this update ID pertains towards update events, which means that I can't rely on catching updates because updates always change. Updates always change with updates, as that kind of makes sense. So with everything I've been considering with Telefyy using Telegram API for Netcode, this brings me to today's workshop. Do I want to use sockets? And the title sort of suggests this decision. Should I use middleware or should I use raw sockets? I'm pertaining towards sockets. Right now. Excuse me. I am pertaining towards sockets. And I'm going to talk about some of the options. I think I made a list somewhere. And then I'm going to start coding. Yeah, so over here, potential netcode APIs I can rely on. Berkeley sockets, which is like Microsoft's system.net.sockets namespace, which is super reliable, amazing, robust sockets library for LAN, for internet connectivity. And that's what I'm pertaining towards. WebSockets, which is a bit of a higher level abstraction of sockets, particularly for internet connectivity. WebSockets is a good shout for internet apps, I think, if you want to build from the ground up. I think the abstraction is a little bit more higher level, which means less work to do, but I'm actually more familiar with sockets than WebSockets. So I actually feel much more comfortable programming in sockets, funnily enough. I'm going to just close my app. I'm going to close PostScheduler Lite for now. I can always load it later. I was considering Azure Cloud. So Azure is a good middleware. Azure is like an industry standard. There's Azure, very compatible .NET APIs for Azure. But the learning curve, I would argue, is a little bit steep. Learning Azure SDK, learning APIs pertaining towards getting my app on the cloud. There's Azure PlayFab, which I have tested in another app. I was building a game one day, and I wanted my game to support internet. I wanted my game to go online. So I decided to subscribe to Azure PlayFab. I was on a free tier, but I was getting progress. Like, I got my API to respond to logging in and stuff. It was really exciting stuff. So I did put a PlayFab on the list because I know PlayFab can be used for, especially for like game APIs. If you're building like netcode for a game, PlayFab's really decent actually for .NET, for like PC games built on .NET or something like that. And of course Telegram API, which I was exploring in the previous workshop. Telegram API may work. If you're familiar with using .NET Telegram API, then this is a good shout. Although I would be constricted to Telegram's infrastructure, right? Telegram's API infrastructure, which is a big consideration, as if I want to create a really fully robust netcode library, I want a really robust netcode, I probably want my own custom solution. And thus, and then Nuget. So Nuget probably has a multitude of different middleware for sockets and WebSockets. maybe even higher level abstractions that sit on top of sockets. I might even rely on that. But I really want to go. I want to go low level for now because I want to understand the sockets library, and I want to be able to not be limited when I want to sort of like port or like. So what I'm planning to do is to establish a LAN, like a local area network connection, with Telefyy. I'm going to talk about this soon, so that Telefyy, my build of Telefyy right now, supports LAN. And then once I can confirm LAN, I wrote this down somewhere here under my Telefyy netcode notes. So yeah, I want to implement LAN. We're going to do that first. I'm going to attempt to do that with sockets. I've actually I've actually gotten myself to a head start. I started writing some LAN features, some functionality pertaining towards sockets. So I'll talk us through it, and then I'll kind of summarize what I'm going to try and do, and I'll probably get into some straight up coding. Let me just quickly check my dashboard. It's good for me to kind of set the groundwork first, just so we all know what's going on. Alright, so for those who don't know, I'll get the documentation up for anyone who wants to know more about sockets, so that you may not be familiar with sockets. So I want to talk about what sockets is, just very quickly, and then that will kind of give a bit more context into the code. So sockets sockets namespace, the class, implements the Berkeley sockets interface, which is a protocol, a standard for connecting to the internet, basically. So MSDN/Learn Microsoft have a rich set of documentation how to implement sockets. So here we go. We got like different classes, methods, how to use sockets and constructors and stuff like that. I'll probably be referring to this as I'm going through. So you can basically make a LAN app. You can make a internet app using sockets. Drawbacks. I should have made an AI search tab. Maybe I'll ask AI in a bit. Let me get this AI panel up. It's just that it takes a bit longer for me to load the side panel for AI chat. I prefer to use full Bing, to load from Bing. So, what are the advantages of using LAN or sockets rather? And then I'll get straight to coding. So I'm asking AI search, what are the advantages of using sockets for .NET apps as opposed to relying on middleware? Middleware being like Azure, Microsoft Azure PlayFab, and any other like middleware libraries that might be on Nuget, say. There are drawbacks to using raw sockets. There are advantages, which we're going to quickly go through. It's kind of important to evaluate my options before I start investing in the code. So sockets, why sockets wins with performance and low latency, minimal overhead, no serialization frameworks, routing layers of product or physical abstractions, or protocol abstractions rather. Everything is raw. It's just raw sockets, right? Direct TCP UDP access means fewer hops between my app and the network, and full control over the protocol. Now I'm sure there's some cons. When middleware is better, for rapid application development, I will admit, for RAD, it is better to rely on middleware. However, I'm going to try and build a simple LAN implementation, which shouldn't take too much overhead to build a simple LAN implementation. So I'm not too worried about the first point here. Standardized protocols, yeah, you got to consider if I implement sockets, I'm going to have to. If I really want to consider those who are building after me, then I need to implement the standards, to a fair degree of accuracy, such that my code base, my netcode is easier to deal with, right? Security and such. But for the sake of testability and robustability and simplicity, I'm going to stick with sockets. But I thought I would just explore some of the advantages and drawbacks of using sockets versus middleware. Sockets versus middleware, okay? Alright, cool. Let's get straight into the code now. Let's kind of get into this. So first things first, I guess Hello World is such a beautiful way to test an app. I'm going to, as per usual, I'm going to try and push a Hello World functionality to test my sockets. So what I've done here off screen, this is like between now and the previous live stream that I did the other day. Sockets. How do I implement sockets interface? So I constructed a sockets class. Socket type is datagram, and the protocol type is TCP. So we're TCP ready here. Now, this host name, this refers to my machine, if I'm not mistaken. And this function, get host entry async, I'm basically getting my machine so that sockets knows that I'm building my entry point from this particular machine. This is dynamically allocated. I got a DNS. I forgot what it stands for. I know it's like dynamic name server, I think it's called. I could be wrong on that. Someone might want to correct me if I'm wrong. But this function gets my machine name, if I'm not mistaken. I've used this function before. IP address. So I'm actually indexing the first entry in my address list, which hopefully should be my relevant IP address. So I'm storing my IP address. I'm constructing this IP endpoint class over here, passing my IP address and a port. So a socket is comprised of two main components: a port number and an IP address. This builds a socket. And a port can be an arbitrary number. This number, I put 5,000. It could be 200. I could put 5 as a port number. I put 5,000. But I think there is one number that people, like developers, tend to stay away from. I think it's 800 or 80. Only because with Win32, if I'm not mistaken, in a Win32 environment, or Windows per se, 80, the port 80 is actually used by Windows. Like, you know, Windows or other apps use port 80, if I'm not mistaken. Someone may want to double check me on that. Make sure I'm getting the right number there. But port 80 is typically used by other apps and services running Windows. So in a development test environment, I would stay away from port 80. I think that's the port. But I'm going to go back to 5,000. I want to actually search that. Maybe later if I don't forget, I'll see. I think it's port 80. And I'm calling connect async. I have a really short pipeline in my constructor. I probably want to move this away from the constructor. So I'll start writing my code. I'm going to make a function here. Basically, I don't really want anything in my constructor. I don't want to be initializing features when I'm constructing my class. I just want to call a public function. This function may even be statically called, but I'm going to leave it like this. I'll make it an async function because I've got async functionality in one of my functions. And I'll use the await keyword. So when I call initialize socket, because I've got some await functionality here, I've got some, it's an async, I'm returning a task, but I don't see task-like behavior, but I'm going to keep it like that for now. This may come in handy later down the line if I've got like multiple sessions or something. So initialize socket is over here. So here I create my socket IP address, my IP endpoint, I'm calling connect. I think this is my asynchronicity here, connect async, because this connection is established once this task completes. This connect async returns a value task which completes when a connection is established. But this will probably await, as I put await keyword, because what has to happen is that I need to bind my socket first, and that might take time to authenticate. hence why I decided to make this function, my initialize network pipeline function, an async function, just so I can support awaiting. Because what's going to happen is, as this is awaiting on a particular thread on my computer, then I'm calling send request async, oops, which is down here. And what's going on is that I'm creating a buffer, and this buffer holds a message, land test message, and then I am refreshing my buffer, so I've got another buffer. I'm calling, I've got my socket here, I'm passing some parameters. I've got here array resize, buffer, socket buffer. But what I haven't finished is the bind feature. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to call socket. I think it's under my sockets class. I think there's a bind function. Let me double check that. I'm not sure. I might be wrong on that. Yeah, there's bind. Binding is typically done before a connection is established, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see what overloads are necessary here, and then we can kind of read through what bind does. Oh, it just needs an IP endpoint. So what does bind do? My bind, over here, I'm associating a socket with a local endpoint, which is pretty important. This socket is basically my session, and an endpoint is like another machine. So basically I'm saying that I want Telefyy to connect to another session of Telefyy. So bind this line is quite important. I need to pass my local endpoint, which would be here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pass this type, my IP endpoint, and did I spell that right? Yeah. I'm gonna pass it through my function like this. And I just have to make sure when I call this function, I'm passing my endpoint. And basically, when there's a connection over, say, a LAN, then a socket is shared. So that means that if Telefyy, let's say there's an instance of Telefyy 1, an instance of Telefyy 2, or Telefyy server, better said, if the sockets match, so socket would be, remember socket is a port number and an IP address. I'm not too sure about the IP address one, but the port number has to match. But the IP address, I'm passing it under my endpoint. So I'm not too sure how that authenticates. I'm gonna have to look into that actually. But the sockets more or less have to match. That much I know. So I need to call bind appropriately. Let's see. If I pass my object, because I want to call bind after my message has been sent. Oh, but bind has to be called before that actually. So what I'll do, before I call send request async, I want to make sure I'm calling bind. I think that's the data flow there. I'm really trying to avoid globals, guys. That's why I'm taking a bit of time here. Because if I go ahead and just put bind on my pipeline, like here, unless if I return my IP endpoint, I don't want to pass global parameters. So I might have to call bind sockets like here. Which I'm kind of hesitant to do that, but I'm gonna just do it anyway. But I might need to use the. Is this awaitable? Is there bind async? Let me see. No, there's not. Okay. Pass my IP endpoint. Is it static context? Yeah, it is. Can I make this static? Right. leave it like that. I'm calling bind, and then I'm connecting. I'm attempting to connect, and then my pipeline, my small pipeline, is then sending my message over my socket. Guys, I'm going to attempt to make a debug mode for Telefyy. And debug mode, I wrote a note of it here. All debug mode is, it's a mode where my app can test certain features. So I'm going to just read what I wrote. So debug mode allows Telefyy to test, I wrote test wrong. So I want to be able to test features. Let's see if I can just stretch that out a little bit. Such as LAN communications with just a single instance of Telefyy. That's the idea of debug mode. Because in the past, I've even made tutorials where I've got like 2 Visual Studios up and I'm testing LAN. I don't want to have 2 Visual Studios up and test LAN. I want 1 Visual Studio and 1 app to test if I can. So I'm gonna attempt, guys, to build a debug mode so that I can literally test and test bench perhaps my LAN without needing to have 2 instances of Telefyy or Telefyy server, if that makes sense. That's going to probably take up the majority of this particular workshop. Yeah, so let's see. How can I start with this? I'll make it public. No, private for now. So I have this debug mode flag. I can make it an enum, but I'm not going to do that. So I guess when I construct my class, I can sort of like pass my debug mode flag. I may not always want to be in debug mode. So if my debug mode is true, then I'm gonna toggle debug mode. And so first things first, I'll just trigger my flag to be true. I could use this keyword, but I'm hesitant. So using this keyword here just means that debug mode is in class scope. That's all it does really for now. So now debug mode here is not actually debug mode here is not confused with debug mode there. Debug mode here pertains towards my global flag up here. That makes sense. Even though the syntax highlighting is kind of like the same. Okay, so it's all well and good. I'm toggling a debug mode flag. So let's actually try and flesh things out. So we want to look at client server, right? So I'm gonna build with the assumption that I'm using 1 instance of Telefyy. A server tends to listen on a port, a socket. A server will listen for incoming requests. So right now I've kind of built the client feature to connect or push a message, which is this test message, but I need to build the server feature. So I'm going to do that now. I'm not sure if I need reference for this, but I think I'll be okay. I'll give it a shot, and then if I need reference, I'll do so. But I think the initialization process, it's important that I flag the debug mode, because I might be sharing the initialization process actually. So I need a debug pipeline. I just want to check here. So I'm checking for debug mode. Now, I'm gonna protect. I'm gonna encapsulate my pipeline with a predicate check. So again, if debug mode is enabled, I'm gonna use my global flag. Really makes sense. So if debug mode is enabled, then I'm gonna use my debug mode pipeline. Because the thing is here, if I'm using one instance of Telefyy to test LAN, I need to be wary of how I construct my sockets. And for the sake of efficiency, I might be able to construct them differently than if I say have like a client's component here and a LAN remote server. So that's why I want to kind of segregate my debug pipeline to say my non-debug pipeline. Okay, let me see. So I'm initializing socket. So this is kind of the client component, so I'm going to make a note. And obviously my code's not pretty right now, but if I can confirm a hello world over my LAN, then I can use another session, say, to pretty up the code, make things like more kind of like client server, maybe even MVC compliant, that kind of stuff. But before this, I kind of want to establish my server, so I'm going to attempt to do that. Alright, cool. More or less, the socket initialization will probably be quite similar to my client component. Only difference being that instead of pushing a message, I'm going to be listening on my TCP on my socket. Let's see. Socket, IP address. So I'm going to take this. I'm not going to bother writing it all out again. Excuse me, guys. Bind socket. I'm not going to call bind socket just yet. But I want to have a look at my sockets class and see what's available. Is there a listen somewhere? Yeah, I thought so. Places a socket in a listening state. So where do I call bind? Does the server bind? And then when a server binds a socket, then perhaps my client can push a message. That's what I'm considering. I think my server has to bind a socket. I don't think a client component binds a socket. I think a client waits for a request to be accepted by a server, and then the message is then pushed. Maybe I could even do like an echo behavior. So on authentication success, my server echoes like a message, like a handshake, and then my client knows to then push messages, stuff like that. So I'm gonna place my server in the listening state here. It's probably asyncable. Is there listen async? I'd be surprised if there wasn't. I don't know. Maybe no. I think maybe there's still. I don't know. Yeah, even my IntelliSense is suggesting I call bind before listen. I don't think my client component calls bind. I think my client connects. Let me see. Yeah, I think at least. So I'm gonna take off this. I'm going to place this here. Oh, hold on a second. Yeah, that's fine. IP endpoint, IP address. Which coincidentally, in a sense, IP address will be the same because I'm using the same machine. But I might still get different IP address, I'm not sure. Some IP addresses are kind of dynamic. Wait keyword. Oh, what have I done wrong? Oh, okay, that's fine. Let's adjust my seat. Okay. So I'm getting back to this. So I'm initializing my server socket. I'm establishing a socket, my port number, and my IP address. I'm binding my socket. I kind of want to debug this even before I run it properly for the first time. Make sure I'm calling my pipeline. I wonder what's best practice, guys. Do you think, guys, it's best to debug whilst I code on the fly? Or is debugging something that's good to do after a feature has been written? I don't know. I'm starting to consider that debugging as I'm going is the way forward. I think debugging as I go is a bit longer, but it kind of makes sense. So I'm literally debugging this chunk of functionality. I'm gonna give it a try. I want to see what happens. So I call my initialize socket server. Once I'm listening, then hopefully I'll be able to call initialize socket. But then I need to be able to accept my request. But let me try it. Let me try and debug this server component, see what happens. Take things quite slow. Guys, I think my battery ran out. I think my camera died. Hold on, guys. The stream is still rolling, but it seems my camera's gone off. I'm not sure what happened. No, I'm still here. Ooh. I'm not sure what happened there, but my camera just turned off. I am fairly zoomed out. Oh yeah, because I was zooming in before, so I'm zoomed out now. That's fine, I don't really care. I care a little bit, but I'm not going to fiddle around. I think this is better. Okay, so I've loaded up my Telefyy, and I'm debugging lines 60 and 62, particularly to just expose my socket on my server. I want to just kind of like make sure my classes have been instantiated. I've got initialization of my socket classes, okay? Hopefully I've got IP address, my port, everything. So this is taking a minute. Whilst I'm doing that, guys, it might be a good time to shout out, just a plug, just a quick plug, I might as well. If you guys are considering learning .NET, let's say, if anyone's watching .NET newbie, with all due respect, I don't say that in a bad way. I mean it as in like if anyone watching is a beginner with .NET, consider my Learn C Sharp Masterclass. I'm piloting a .NET C Sharp Masterclass where you can learn C Sharp from the ground up. You can learn even if you've got absolutely no experience with C Sharp or coding in general, but you want to learn. Why not invest in your programming journey, in your rock star era of becoming a developer? You can invest towards that with my Learn C Sharp Masterclass. Everything's on the page. However, I would strongly suggest you guys just DM me first. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. My link is on the description of this stream. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me on Telegram, book a call. I have a calendar link where you can book a session so that I can kind of see where you are at with programming with .NET C Sharp. And yeah, we can get you enrolled onto the masterclass. So if you're interested, definitely check out the description of this live stream. There's more information there. Okay, so this is Telefyy. Telefyy is loading up now. How am I doing for time? 40 minutes in. I don't know how long this stream's going to be. I tend to try and aim for 1 hour, 2 hours maximum. Even on my uncapped sessions, it's usually around 2 hours. I don't think I hit a 3-hour stream yet, did I? Maybe I did. I think for episode 10, it was quite a long stream. I'm not too sure. I can't remember. Nah, not episode 10. Or was it episode 10? I can't remember. But if I call for an uncapped stream, that means after an hour, I'm good to just keep going. But I'm not going to call for that yet because I'm not sure how I feel about the duration. This stream might run for a little bit more than an hour, but I might try and keep it under 2 hours. I don't know. I'll see how it goes. If I'm really feeling like I want to keep going, I'll call for a long stream. Long streams just have no time limit at all. Alright. I'll attempt to quote-unquote log in. Am I constructing this class? I've got references. I don't even know if I'm constructing the class properly. I don't think I'm even constructing my network class. There's no reference to my constructor, so I'm gonna construct this upon me hitting login. So I'm gonna go back to my main page. Where's my login function? Over here. I'm gonna hit a break. I'm gonna log in. I'm gonna hit the login button. So I hit a break so I can edit my code. I'm loading my data. That's fine. Initialize Telegram client. That's the Telegram stuff. So remember earlier in the stream, I managed to get Telefyy to push like a sort of hello world message. But it wasn't hello world. It was like higher or something from Telefyy. I can't really remember exactly what I wrote. So what I'm going to do after that, which is line 74, I'm going to construct my networking class for my netcode. I might need to restart this. Networking. Yeah, let's just start over. I'm gonna just restart that. I didn't even put the namespace right. What folder am I in? I'm still in models. Let me try that again. Here's my networking namespace, but that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a networking class. Networking is something else. So I'm gonna call my namespace Telefyy UWP models. That should be networking class over there. Construct my networking class. I'll just keep it like that. And then I'm going to call my pipeline. Ah, yeah, I need to call debug mode. That's why I'm getting an error. Oh, I've done it twice. How did that happen? Initialize network pipeline. Make sure I'm in debug mode. Over here, I'm going to pass true. So that when I call my initialize network pipeline, make sure I call my in debug mode. Where's my class? Where's networking? So debug mode true. If debug mode is true, initialize server sockets. Okay, I'll give this a try. I'm gonna run in debug mode, as in like my Visual Studio session. Alright, I'm back. So my username and password, even though only my username gets parsed right now. Okay, let's see what's going on, guys. Oh, I made a mistake. That's weird. Oh, that's weird. Oh. Really? So can I use TCP protocol? Is that what is the issue? My protocol parameter? Strange. Have a little look here. I'm quite surprised. Let me change that. Let me see what else is here. Can I use TCP? Internet Protocol version 4, maybe? That might be a good shout. Though I've always relied on TCP for that. Let's have a look at what happens. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's just that my sockets is not constructed. Well, this is the line that constructs sockets. I'm not sure. To restart. Break over there, 949. Try again. So Telefyy is just loading up in the background. Oops. Okay guys, I'm just waiting for Telefyy to load. Oh, that's strange. Oh no, okay, sorry guys. I was looking at the wrong. My dashboard's a little bit behind, so my YouTube dashboard's showing not what. My YouTube dashboard is not showing what's going on now. There's a bit of lag, so I got a little bit confused. But I'm slowing things down. I'm browsing off screen just while I'm waiting. I don't want to slow down my internet. Okay, IPv4. Quite surprised I was getting issues with my protocol type, it seemed. I've not had issues with protocol type before. Let's Telefyy. Is my app here? Where's it gone? My build says Visual Studio says my build is ready, but I don't see anything. I might have to restart that. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Okay, so I'm initializing socket, so it makes sense socket is now up to here. Let me go to my, I was gonna say watch list, but I think of my locals. I don't want to write anything. Okay, so I'm gonna continue. I think it's something to do with the sockets. Do I have to implement when I construct socket? Do I need to pass my protocol type? Is it something to do with the fact that I'm trying to construct sockets on the same line? I'm gonna put that, but I don't think it's my actual TCP parameter. Let me check something. Socket. I definitely have to pass overloads. What's the first one? What's the first overload? Handle, save socket handle, socket info. Socket type is the one I'm using. Socket type and protocol type. IPv4 socket. Strange. Is there a none option? No, there isn't. I need to select a protocol. Not sure why it's not working. What's this one? TCP transmission control protocol. User datagram protocol. I'm trying UDP actually. I'm not too sure why it's not constructing. Anyone in the chat is aware of what's going on, let me know. I'll be checking here and there. just restarted Telefyy. My UWP. Telefyy should just load soon. I took away some static keywords. I think maybe sockets, constructing sockets in a static context might be an issue. I'm not too sure. Yeah, I think it's something to do with the static context. I want to change it to TCP later. But yeah, making sockets non-static was the answer here. Right, so let's have a look at our sockets object. Let's have a quick look at what's going on here. Yeah, so this sockets defaults to IP version 6. Some static objects. Okay, put some non-public members. Hey, my mouse wheel is scrolling. Hey, my mouse wheel works now. For a couple of days now or so, my mouse wheel wasn't working. My mouse wheel's working. Happy about that. Cool. So that's my desktop name. Well, I might as well show you guys. That's my desktop. It's hard to see probably because it's so small, the text. I'm actually using a laptop. I threw an exception. What's this? Socket. It's the same thing. So this is the issue. Initialize socket. What am I calling this? Is this my client component? Yeah, so again, I shouldn't really be initializing the same socket, like the same socket object. I'll probably make 2 socket objects, because it just doesn't make sense. But it's funny how, probably because this is already instantiated, I don't know. I'll make socket and I'll make socket client. Now, will socket client work for TCP? I don't know. Try that again. Goodness. So I'm just loading Telefyy again. Oh, goodness me. Right. Strange. Maybe TCP doesn't work. I'm gonna change it to UDP. See what happens. No, I'm quite surprised if UDP parses here. It looks like UDP actually parsed. Oh, that's weird. Is this method static? Maybe that's why. think my initialize sockets function might be static. Async task. Oh, it should be a void function, to be honest. Initialize server. Async initialize server socket. Async void. Initialize socket. Async task. You know, not really returning anything. I'm gonna change that to void and see what happens. Obviously I can't await a void function, so I'm gonna get rid of that. Maybe that's an issue. But I might need to, because I'm listening somewhere, I don't know. Make sure my sockets are not static. Private sockets, clients, so they're exactly the same. I'm using the same protocol, UDP, so I don't know why I'm throwing. I've got a break at the end there, my server logic. I'm going to put a break on line 66. I want to evaluate my client socket. I want to see why. Hopefully I can construct my client socket. I don't know what's going on. It's like exactly the same kind of socket as my server socket, so I'm not sure why I was throwing. Right. Okay, socket was constructed. Yeah, okay, sweet. Got it working. My machine name is the same. Okay, got another. Oh, I'm not exception handling, guys. Where are my try catches at? Datagram, because I'm using UDP. Have a look at that. It might be a synchronization issue I'm facing right now. Socket, let me have a look at that. Look at my socket. My socket ain't connected. Using a UDP connection. What socket am I using? It's the server socket. No, it's a. Oh, whoops! I messed that up. Send request async. What am I calling this? Send request async. Make sure I'm using the right socket. Because if I'm sending the message, I want the client to send it. The server's listening, but my client socket is this. So I'm going to close the program quickly. Socket client, I'm going to use that instead of my server socket. Make sure I'm binding my socket on time. See what am I calling bind? Follow it line 61. Put a break on. Bind. So I can just get the order of things with my pipeline correct. Especially when I start dealing with awaiting and like multi-threading and tasks, synchronicity is a big thing. I do admittedly need to study asynchronicity, better said maybe synchronicity. I need to study asynchronicity with .NET a lot better than I do so far. Especially when I'm dealing with tasks and multi-threading apps. Understanding how threads work, you know, at a very rudimentary level, I've got a grasp on multi-threading and asynchronicity. But I think to really optimize, yeah, it'd be really fun to endeavor. That would be a session on its own, actually. I think. So I haven't called bind yet, and I'm trying to initialize my socket, my client, which is really strange. Hi guys, so I'm trying to call my bind in my try catch, but what's actually happening is that I'm calling send before bind, and that's an issue. I might be okay just doing nothing for now, because I think this function is going to get called again after bind is called. If I observe my pipeline, I'm calling bind socket somewhere, and then I'm calling listen. And then I'm calling my send request async, which then calls my send. So intrinsically, I might be okay just with an empty catch, because I'm gonna call these lines again, it seems. Oh goodness me. I'm definitely quite keen on just doing a lot of background research on sockets development. Actually, maybe in my off time, my free time, I might just read the sockets interface for .NET and just read some of the topology notes I can find on like Learn Microsoft and stuff. Definitely won't go. It would definitely be good for me to kind of get the background on sockets. Because, for example, I'm not able to pass TCP, which has not happened to me before, actually. It's weird. So I might need to familiarize myself with UDP instead. So this is probably catching. It's probably try catching. I'm probably getting an exception here. And I'm calling a socket feature, which I shouldn't be because I haven't even hit send yet. I would expand my try. So like here, just to be safe. See what's going on. I want to check my IP endpoint. I don't want to return on my catch. I don't want to parse anything. I'm going to just return my function. This probably shouldn't be static as well. I think I'm getting issues because it's static. I have to wait because I already pressed run. But I think because I'm calling sockets in a static context, and that's a little bit dicey. I'm gonna try and log in, and when I start my debug session, I'll see if I can remove my static keyword. No, I have to restart. Okay. So I'm just waiting for Telefyy to load. I'm just gonna try catches. Alright guys, so we are about 1 hour and a half into the stream. I'm going to close the stream for now. Having some issues on the listen. I'm going to do a bit of research off screen about the order of my pipeline, when I should be listening on my socket, when's appropriate to bind and stuff like that. I'm going to do some more off research. But for now, this stream is a little bit capped in the sense that the time is capped. So I kind of want to keep it under 2 hours. So guys, thanks for tuning in for today. Next episode, we're going to continue on our journey with sockets, implementing a simple LAN network so we can push hello world on our LAN. So I'm going to do some more research and we're going to continue here. So thanks guys. I'm going to cut the stream and I hope you all have a great evening or morning, depending what time you're watching this. Thanks guys. Take care. Bye.